Welcome in to the Unblocked podcast, Monday, November the 6th. I'm Keith here with Brian. Our regular coach is off today, but we're privileged to be joined by Coach Jon Cooper here. And as always, we're going to get into a great conversation with him. But before we get to that, just remember to interact with us on all the social media platforms, especially Twitter. But we're also on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, where you're going to be watching this video. Shoot us a message. Leave us a comment, ask us a question. We might get yours on one of our shows coming up soon. And we're always looking for listener questions. And we want to thank our friends Run and Try out on Hillcrest for sponsoring the show. Go see my guy Aaron. He'll take care of you for all your athletic needs there. So while we're here, let's get right into it. Jon, Brian, floor is yours.
Just want to introduce Coach Cooper. He spent 45 years coaching both at the high school level and the college level at Aurora College, Benedictine University, about to be inducted into the Benedictine University Hall of Fame here in December, which is a great honor, Coach. When did you realize you wanted to be a coach? Was there a moment or a time?
Well, I think I knew I wanted to be involved in football since I was 7 years old. I grew up in Chicago and loved pro football. I'm 7 years old. I'm following the Chicago Cardinals and Ollie Matson, who was my boyhood hero. That dates me. I understand that. And of course, I had the usual fantasy of a kid wanting to be a pro football player someday. And I learned early on I wasn't that kind of person. I didn't have the stature, the skill. I played high school and college football, and I thought I wanted to go into sports in some way. I had friends that, noticed my passion in football, and I often heard, you should be a coach. And I made the decision to do that right before my sophomore year in college. And I experienced three different head coaches when I was in college, and I learned a lot, from those experiences, through that. And so that's kind of what, got me where I really knew. I mean, it was kind of a progression, so to speak.
Now, you've had a Hall of Fame career. What are some of the most rewarding things about coaching as far as seeing old teams? I know you visit a lot of campuses, and you actually got to coach at the hometown of Ronald Reagan, I did find out.
Yeah, I was a head coach at Dixon High School, and that was an interesting experience, believe me. We didn't have a great amount of success. We had some good teams, but some really bad teams too. So it was a very up and down. I learned a lot from that. I was young, only 30 years old when I became a head coach, and became the defensive coordinator and assistant head coach at Aurora University, starting in 1986. But for me, coaching, rewarding thing about it was just seeing how your players develop as people. I'm in coaching for the relationships. It started for me. I didn't have a father for most of my childhood. My adoptive father left when I was 5. I later had a stepfather I wasn't close to, and he died less than 5 years after he came into my life. And that's one of the reasons I'm interested in Mike Gottfried's team focus so much is because of that. But anyway, coaches were like fathers to me, and I got a lot of guidance. Probably wouldn't have got into college if it wasn't for my high school coach. And going to bat for me, and I wanted to kind of give that back, and that was one of the main motivations. It might not have been my first motivation, but it became my main motivation. And I'm a big believer in providence, and a lot of young men came into my life that came from difficult situations that I could relate to, and I like to think we made a difference in their lives, in our coaching staffs. Even the ones that had great family needed guidance. And I wanted our teams to be like family and have a common goal and look out for each other. I was blessed and an assistant to be in programs where that was a priority. Helped me as a head coach. I tried to pass it on to assistant coaches and players, particularly the ones that wanted to go into coaching. I saw several former players of the game of Benedictine just recently going into coaching. It was just a great experience to do that, So those are the most rewarding things, that we had. Obviously, we won a lot of games at Benedictine and had some good success, but that's the bottom line. Is it's what you do for those kids, it's kind of a calling in some ways.
Now, who were some of your mentors? I know you were close to Jimmy Johnson, longtime assistant with Philadelphia Eagles. Who were some of your other mentors, Coach?
Well, I had several, and it all started with Dave McCarroll, my high school coach. He was a minister's son and a strong Christian. He was as tough as John Wayne, but he had a huge heart for his players. I wasn't a great player, but for some reason he took an interest in me as I didn't have a dad. He cared about us more as players and provided guidance. We were more than just players, and you could sense that in him. And he helped me with my faith. He helped me with my uh, academics. He went above and beyond. I wasn't a great student. I went to suburban high school full of future doctors and lawyers, and I kind of thought I was pretty stupid. And I finally figured out I wasn't my senior year. I started improving, but it was a struggle to get into college. I had my best friend and I. Neither one of us were great. Had great careers, class rank wise, coming out of that school. And he got his brother-in-law, or his brother was the AD at North Park College, and we were able to get into school after we went to other schools to take courses to get accepted, kind of like Rudy at Notre Dame. But we got in, and we were in Chicago, and we had a great experience, there. And my first job was with Jim Rexilius, who was a legendary Chicago area high school coach and also the brother-in-law of Dave McCarroll, and another strong Christian coach who was a tremendous mentor. And one of the things I learned from him, he emphasized to me as a young coach, coach every kid you have, even if they have no talent. He wanted all his players to be coached as if they were a starter. He told us to find something good to say about every kid, catch them doing something right. He used to stand by the locker room door and shake the hand of every player after every practice. I never saw anything like that in my life. He would tell some kid that was a backup that hardly ever played, he says, "Hey, that's the best I've seen you look today." And he was serious, and it was no accident the numbers that he had in his program at Wheaton North. He also ran an FCA and went Fellowship of Christian Athletes and went above and beyond to help kids. I was a pallbearer at his funeral, and I never saw anything like it in my life. I never saw so many people at a visitation. There were lines out in the street to get to the visitation, and he had such a tremendous impact on the kids and the people that he came into contact with. And when I first became a high school coach, I tried to be like Coach Rex, and I realized early on I'm not Coach Rex. I'm Coop. I'm Coach Coop, and I had to be Coach Coop. So it took me a while to realize that, but still, the lessons I learned from him and his brother-in-law, Coach Carroll, were things that I took with me in all my years of coaching.
Now, can you tell us when you went from high school to college, what was that leap like to Aurora?
We started a brand new program at Aurora. They hadn't had football since 1952, and we started in '86, and we were playing, some pretty good schools. St. Francis, had an NFL prospect on their team as a new NAIA program, and did they take us apart. Fortunately, it rained, and they couldn't beat us too bad. And I learned the difference in ebbs and flows between high school and college. You got 12-minute quarters in high school and 15-minute quarters in college. And I can remember these games are lasting forever. And these adjustments these people are making, I thought I had something that, no, they adjusted right away. And that was the biggest thing. And the guy that brought me out of that was Jim Johnson. I went to Jim Johnson and says, I went to a friend of mine. Hey, Jim Johnson will help you. He's great with that stuff. He was the St. Louis Cardinals defensive line coach at the time, and I went down, my old Chicago Cardinals, and I went down and spent some time with him, and he sat me down and he told me how to defend these different things and the one-back sets that we had been seeing in high school, and our friendship. I had met him, I knew him from before, but we became really good friends. During that time, we had a lot in common, a lot of mutual friends, and it was that he was the person that probably without him I'm not sure I survive as a college coach because I really learned a lot from the time I spent with him. Went out to the training camps, wherever he was at, I went to training camp, and that's how I got to know John Harbaugh through that.
Yeah, well, I know you've got a great relationship with John. He appreciates everything that you do for him. Then you went to Benedictine after Aurora. You in 2005, you took over a 1-9 program with 24 players. What do you do in that situation? I mean, you barely got enough to play, and you turned it around rather quickly too.
Well, it took a little. It took more than I'd like. We won 3 games that first year, and that was a miracle. And that first team was pretty special. We didn't get there till March. I had to hire a staff, and it was quite an experience. But I can remember, I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big believer in Providence, and Benedictine has a really nice faith community. And first full time day on the job, I get a call from the Abbey, and he says, "Coach, I'm praying for you every day, and you're going to need it." And so I'll never forget that, that call, and it made a real impression on me, and it made me really believe and feel like I was doing the right thing being there, and because there had been some trepidation, because a lot of people told me don't go to Benedictine. But we had great support from the administration. There had been some changes, and they built a beautiful facility, and eventually they put in a really nice weight room and made it a little easier to recruit. And we started to have some success, and we won that first championship in 2010 after competing for two of the years before that, almost getting in. And that was the first championship since 1935. And so that was, it wasn't all bad at Benedictine before that. There's some really great players and great coaches that went through that. Tom Beck, Bill Callahan, line coach with the Browns. He was a player, and Bill was great to me through all those years. He was with the Eagles for a while. He coached with John for a little while. And, Bill was a Benedictine alum, played quarterback there. And he never forgot where he came from. And so there were some great people at Benedictine. But those were some of the great memories of all the great people that I was associated with, through Benedictine. It helped that we won games.
You got to win. That's the name of the game. But now you're working for Ourlads NFL Scouting as an analyst and scout. What does a typical week look like for a scout? How much film do you watch? And what does Ourlads do, if you can share with the audience?
Sure. Well, I retired at age 66 from coaching, and for a number of reasons. Part of me wanted to continue, but a good friend of mine, Dan Shanka, is the owner of Ourlads Scouting Service, and Dan was a scout with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Dan is who got John Harbaugh into the NFL. Dan went to John Wooten, the personnel director, because he saw him, coaching in college. And he says, and John Wooten told him, "You see anybody that's a good college coach, and let us know, and we'll look at hiring." And that's how Sean Payton got into the NFL, is through Dan. And I knew Sean. I worked camps with him. Bill Callahan, he noticed him when he was at Wisconsin, and John Harbaugh. And Dan's very outgoing, great personality, and he left full-time scouting and bought the company Ourlads from Tom Hepler, who I knew. And I got to know Dan when he was a scout, and I was at Aurora, and we had a really good running back, and he came to scout him. And I had told him about Ourlads, and because Ourlads started in 1983 as a mimeograph sheet passed out at the NFL draft by Tom Hepler and his son, who was the original owner. And then he started to put a book out. He sent the book to colleges, and he looked for help from college coaches. And being a college coach, I gave him some help. I was very interested in the NFL draft. And, Jim Johnson encouraged that, because he really loved Ourlads. He used to call up and say every year, "Where's my catalog?" He called it his catalog of college players. And Dan decided when Tom retired, Dan decided to buy the company from Tom. It was really interesting, because Dan kept bugging me, "When you retire, I need you. When you retire, I need you." And sure enough, I retired. I went back to work for Dan in 2016, and Dan had bought the company in 2005, and he really turned it into something. They were doing the East-West Shrine Bowl at the time. They started that up, and he was working with some teams. Dan had a stroke in 2021. And that kind of changed things a little bit for Dan. He's back working again, but we don't do much with NFL teams. We do a lot with media. We got a real strong website, Ourlads.com, where you can. And the big thing there is the NFL depth charts and the college depth charts. We've got every college and every NFL team updated almost hourly, it seems like, by a number of people that are involved in that. And uh, so Dan and his wife Peggy are running it from out in Arizona, and I'm the associate general manager now, so I'm supposed to be retired. But we enjoy it. We've got some scouts, some guys that are working for us, mostly part time, and we've had veteran NFL scouts come in and out of the organization over the years, and so it's a pretty good group. We're kind of old school scouting, watch the film and write reports. The analytics are there, but we've got a guy that does some of that stuff, but we're still pretty old school in terms of how we evaluate players. And for me, we start in the summer, looking at last year's film, and then we put out a preview and we work pretty hard at it. And now it's a little slow right now, and it will be until we start getting a lot of this year's game tape. And we put out a preview online that's on our website, and that went out about 2 weeks ago. It's just got some stacks and some snippet reports on some of the players. Most, probably about 25 to 30 at each position, are ranked, preliminary rankings, and then we start, getting after it. And anybody who wants to hire us to do anything for the media, and then we do radio shows and things of that nature, and then we start working on that draft guide pretty much in December, and that comes out in April. It's a big book. We're one of the last companies that puts out a scouting book, an actual book. And we've got a lot of old school subscribers, coaches, different people that they want a book in their hands. They don't want to look on websites. And that's where we come in, I guess. But we still like the websites, and we're putting a lot of our stuff on the website too. You click on a player on the depth chart, an NFL team, and you'll probably find a scouting report from one of our guides, from previous years that is attached to that, linked to that. So that's there are certain times of year it's really busy, and certain times of years it's slow. And you get into February, March, and April, it's crazy.
Yeah, I imagine
and
so.
in the early fall, like it was crazy up until get into November, it slows down a little bit.
Well, you and Phil Steele, the only people still putting out print.
Yeah, I know. We've talked about doing it. I've got there's an announcer for an NFL team that does I don't know if I should give you his name, but he's very old, and he's been doing it for years and years and years. And he called me up and I said, well, you can go on the web. How come I can't call Peggy anymore and get my guides? And I said, well, we're trying to do it online. We're getting away from the phone. 1-800-PRO-DRAFT, we eliminated that phone. And so you just go on the website. I don't use websites. So we had to work out a deal where he could send us a check, and he orders 500 books for a big draft party he puts on every year. And wow. So we take care of them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. There's still, a lot of people doing that.
Now, a lot of people, I know you and I have